So yesterday we looked at this idea of identity before obedience. And I think many times we have encountered church as being a place full of do's and don'ts. So don't have sex, don't be angry, don't swear. And unfortunately we don't teach enough on the identity in Christ, of what God has done in us. And we looked at two terms. The first one being the indicative and the imperative. And when you read the New Testament, for example, you read Ephesians, the first 3 chapters are Paul doing the indicative, and the last 3 chapters have to do with the imperative. So I'm going to test Jess as to how well she listened as to what the indicative means and then what the imperative means.
Yeah, so the indicative describes the things that have already been done in Christ, and then the imperative is what we need to go out and do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, for example, we looked at a passage in Colossians chapter 3, and in those first few verses, we find out that Jesus died, we have been raised, and we've ascended in Him, and that's our identity in Christ. But then, so that's the indicative. Then he goes to the imperative with a therefore. Therefore, put to death the old nature and the things still lurking around in you. And then he says, put on. So, it's not by works that we saved, it's what Christ has done, the indicative. But we do have a role in becoming more Christ-like. And that's where, as Christians, we still have to fight the passions and the desires of our flesh, but understanding our identity in Christ. We are new creations. We are saints that can still sin. That we have this new nature, and now it's this outworking of the sanctification and becoming more Christ-like. So my goal is, as a church, is that we can first understand our identity before we get into accountability groups and Phil, hold me accountable because I'm sinning and I can't stop sinning. Actually help me understand my identity. What has Jesus done? Who am I in Christ? I need to see myself as dead to sin, as Jesus probably died. It's not a he kind of died situation. He died. So I am fully dead to sin. Now I have to live it. And this is the hard part, the outworking on setting our minds on things above and putting to death and then putting on all these virtues that He calls us to because of the work that has been done in us.
No, that's so good. That's a good conclusion of the series. And we're not going to just disappear and not. I think we're going to linger, as you said, we're going to linger in some of the upcoming preachers and stuff. So it is something that's not going to completely just be done and finished with, and it's always something that we can, on a daily basis, as we look in the mirror every day to fix ourselves, we would kind of, in a spiritual sense, do the same with our identity. Continue to just keep working on those notches of our identity and reminding ourselves that that we are to be our true selves, who God's created us to be, not versions of ourselves or different entities of ourselves, but our whole true selves, who God's created us to be, and then we will truly see the outworking of God in us and through us.
And my heart's desire is that our theology matches our experience. So we can read these verses about death has been defeated and we're alive in Christ and we are more than conquerors and amazing things, but we live like it's not true. And my goal is that our positional truth in God lines up with my reality, my experience. So I don't have to have a foul mouth because I just don't believe I can be free and actually change. So identity before obedience.
Okay, so it's not the end of the series. It's the end of the series as we've preached it. There's 5 parts, but it's not technically the end of this topic that we're talking about. I think we're going to linger in the next couple of preachers, and we'll have a couple of speakers kind of just alluding to this. So it's not completely done. But let's see if we can remember all 5 of the preach topics. So we started with our first preach, which was "The new is here."
And that was our new creation verse.
Yes, the verse that our church is based on.
In Christ, I am a new creation. The old is gone and the
new
is here.
And then the second one was in the image of God. So we are made in His image. We are made like Him in His likeness. And then the third one was, it's already gone out of my brain, it was Christ in me,
And
the hope of glory.
Jumping
Yeah.
there, that was my favorite one because
Yes.
we used the Tupperwares and it was a
Yes.
very practical analogy of no longer being in sin,
Yes.
but Christ
Yeah.
lives in me and I'm also in Christ and
Yes.
Christ is in God, and that was the practical
Yes.
Tupperware one.
And
the
then
fourth
the
one, we're
fourth-
going to test Jess.
Sit, walk, stand.
Come on, there we go.
So
Yeah.
identity first, then the walking by the Spirit,
Yeah.
then it's the standing against the strongholds and the enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then yesterday's one was becoming becoming who you are.
Becoming who you are in
Yeah,
Christ.
yeah.
So it's not you self-identifying, who am I? I want to identify as a cat. No, you're identifying in who you
Yeah.
are in Christ. So
Yeah.
become
Who you
who you
are.
are because of the work that
Yeah.
has been done in Christ. That positional truth now becoming a reality
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
No,
experience.
that's awesome. So you've already kind of alluded to it. So your favorite preach was preach number 3, Christ in me. We took the Tupperwares and stuff like that, and we got to introduce kind of that practical visual analogy of this whole process.
Not a perfect analogy, but at least gives
it
you
gives
a
us an idea.
concept of-
Yeah. Sin in us in sin, Christ in us, we're in Christ, we're in God, we're seated at the right hand of the Father right now. We're here on earth, but you
Yes.
were up there in
We're
heaven.
joined in God,
We're joined.
baptized
Come on,
in His death.
there we go, and resurrected in His life. So that's awesome. Jess, what's your one favorite preach from the
I
whole?
wasn't in the service last week, but I really love that sit, walk, stand. I think it really helps us understand sort of how we journey in our faith and in our identity as believers. Just understanding that we need to be with Him before we go and do for Him. Just being with God and Him speaking into who we are, and then from that place of being with Him and from that place of being an identity with Him, walking it out, and standing for Him. You can't stand for someone you don't know.
And Jess is a youth leader and she's very active. If you are only doing activities for God and you haven't first sat and learnt your identity in Christ, it's going to come short.
Yeah.
So please, with our young people, get the identity first before you come and serve and run around and serve God and then want to go and take on the devil.
Yeah, come on.
How about you, Phil?
Mine is also preach 3, Christ in me.
Yeah.
I have that one tattooed on my arm. Christ in me, the hope of glory. And it's always a reminder that in that we've been baptized. Our old self has been baptized, and we are raised to life in Christ. So that was my favorite
Cool.
preach of the series. They're all good. They're all
If you
good.
missed anything, go to our YouTube channel.
Yes,
you can
yes.
catch up on the
Yeah.
5 sermons, and stay tuned to how we kind of build on some of these topics we looked on, and then in our
Yeah.
new term we'll move to something new.
Yeah, but that's great. Thank you guys for your time. We hope you are encouraged, and you will continually be encouraged by the word and by the preaching of the word, and just unpacking the sermon. And we trust that as we go into this week, that you will become more of who God has created you to be. And we will see you again next week, Monday at 12 o'clock. Otherwise, we'll see you on Sunday at church. Have a blessed week.